I was going through some boxes and suitcases with my brother, and while doing so, we came across something in the corner of one that really took me back down to memory lane. It was a button. And what this button reminded me of was how when I was 7 years old, I began to think of this really romantic idea in which our family would go be farmers. And because we were going to be farmers, we were naturally going to be working very, very hard, all day in fact. And because we were working all day as farmers, we were going to get holes in our clothes. And because we were going to get holes in our clothes, we would need to sew them. Now, I'd already been learning how to sew, and I like stitching things up and fixing things. And then it occurred to me that if we were going to sew them up, we would need to have buttons. Because, of course, we wouldn't just stitch up the holes. We would need buttons sewed onto the holes so we could button up the holes. And I began looking around the house with this new paradigm, thinking, I need to be a productive member of my family, looking out for our family. So I got this container. I still remember it had a red lid. And I started collecting buttons because I knew that when our family became farmers and we were working all day, super hard and getting holes in our clothes, we would need to have buttons that we could sew onto our clothes to button up our holes. Now, because buttons don't exactly grow off of trees, like candies growing off of trees in The Magician's Nephew in the first book of the Chronicles of Narnia, I began to search for where buttons do exist on clothes. I found occasional buttons on shirts that would snip off one here and one there so no one would notice. But I realized, we need nice buttons so that we can have nice clothes to button up our holes with. So I started invading my father's dress shirts, because of course, you can get really nice fancy buttons off dress shirts. And my button collection grew. To this day, I don't know if my father ever noticed that his shirts had very neatly buttons cut off, or if he just sighed and was thinking, what's going on here? I never got busted. Yet this button brought me a memory, which has now brought me a lesson. I tell my children, you are gifted with childhood so you can learn the rules to the game of life before you really have to play the game of life. But for myself, playing the game of life, what was the advantage to my childhood? If I choose to recall it, I can remember how kids think. If I were to correct my younger self, I could just say, don't cut things off. But knowing how he thinks, I could say, wow, it's so wonderful that you want to be a productive member of your family. Is that what's going on? What were you thinking when you did this? That's beautiful. Here's how you can be an actual productive member of your family. By thinking again as a child.